してください。命の危険があります。催事が止まらない。気は済みましたが、その前に首をはねられないようにしないと。
This was the episode that we've been waiting for. The episode that's been building up since the very opening of this show. When we got to see in the opening for the first half of the season, Maomao rushing across the palace, running towards Jinshi, who is at this altar all dressed in finery, doing something. What was going on? What was this great climax that we were building up to? We didn't know until this episode. And oh boy, did it deliver. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and this episode right here, this is culmination, this is payoff, this is the result of all the hard work of setting up all the little things that lead up to just, a great moment. This is how you, as an author, do not squander all of the hard work that you have put in. And I'm going to get into detail about why that is, but first, let's quickly go over the events of this episode. We have Maomao talking with Lihaku at the beginning of the episode about strange things that seem to be going on in the palace. And oh my, it's been piling up. Lihaku comes to return to her this pipe, this ivory pipe, that he says was given to the soldier who accidentally caused the warehouse fire and allowed during the commotion for another warehouse to be broken into and for ceremonial items to be stolen. He then says, well, I talked with the guy who got the pipe, and it was a woman who gave it to him, a woman who covered herself up, but she was rather tall, and she smelled of medicine. Immediately, Mama was like, that sounds like Shuri. But wait, I don't want to just simply jump to a conclusion right now. Father said, don't just go based off of conjecture. So instead, she's like, okay, well, tell me more. What else has been happening? Do you know what was stolen? Do you know who else might have been involved? Where else this woman might have been involved? Has anyone else seen her? Lihaku begins to describe all these other things that have been happening, and we begin to realize, oh, wait a second. Stuff that's been happening throughout this entire series, again, going back to some of the earlier episodes, have been leading towards this. That the men who seem to keep on dying because of stuff that's said over at the pub, the guy who drank too much salt in his liquor because he wasn't able to taste how sweet or salty something was, and thereby killed himself, basically in real time mummified himself with enough salt. The guy who ate bad seaweed and put himself into a coma, those become relevant again. But then later on we also see when Maomao's doing her own research that other stories, other things that she's done become relevant as well. So we have a fire, a theft, we have an induced coma, we have a murder. Now then, things seem to be piling up, but do they all really lead back to Shuri? Do they all mean anything at all? As Maomao says, coincidences happen all the time. It's only when they really begin to overlap again and again and again and again at one point that you begin to realize maybe there's something going on. Well, Jinshi comes and interrupts them at this time. And he's like, well, it looks like you two are having fun. Invite me in on the fun. Who is this man here? Oh boy, good old jealous Jinshi. Well, Lihaku, immediately recognizing someone who really outranks him, runs off. Leaving Maomao alone with Jinshi. They then have their own discussion about what's going on, and Maomao does the right thing. She opens up to Jinshi about what she's thinking about, that there's so much going on, and she's a little bit concerned, and she's like, maybe you would want to look into this. Well, Jinshi, being the really overworked guy that he is like, well, you know what? I'm going to appoint you as an investigator, and if you're able to solve this mystery, I'm going to give you a Bezor. Now then, a Bezor is not just something that was invented by J.K. Rowling. She ultimately took this from history, where People for hundreds of years believed that if you took the stomach stone out of any particular animal, you could use it for medicinal purposes. And I actually looked into this. Come to find out, no. In fact, people have been killed in various ways eating Bezors. So please do not eat a stomach stone out of a cow. It's not going to help you any. But given the time that this whole story takes place, and people really did believe that Bezors were this all-powerful, magical, medical thing, well, Maomao really wants it. So, she accepts the offer to work on this mystery, and thus must go and do research. And I love how her lack of study earlier this season, or say at the beginning of the second half of this season, it really comes to bite her in the rear, where she's a girl who knows how to read, and she's a good detective, but because she didn't take her studies seriously, there's a lot about the palace and its doings that she doesn't understand. So she has to rely on others to fill in the information. And miracle of miracles for her, one of the scribes who's helping her out is actually someone who worked in the rites and ceremonies part of the palace apparatus and actually knows something about the various rituals that are happening and the temple area, the altar area, in which it is all going to go down. And he says, yeah, there's actually something big happening today, and, well, it's really good that we don't have to worry about any sort of engineering problems, mind you, because, well, there's this beautiful fixture that's supposed to come down from the top of the tower, that's supposed to have all of these ornamental and ceremonial drapings. It's really, though, quite heavy, and anything wrong with the rigging fixture could cause it to fall down and utterly smash flat anyone who's doing the ritual. But you know what, it's all good. It's all good. Upper management totally didn't listen to me when I brought up my concerns and demoted me to working in this dusty archive. It's all good. And Maomao's like, wait, what? What are you talking about? She then begins to connect. Wait a second, there's even more happening. The brothers that I helped with their crazy escape room, with their dad's escape room thing, they were working on ritualistic craftings that would be used by the palace. They wouldn't just simply make, oh, your little nice ornaments right here. They were actually making heavy stuff for rigging. Wait a second. So with a bit more quick prodding, Maomao very quickly learns that there is indeed a ritual going down today, and that it's very likely that whatever is going to happen today is probably going to be what causes some serious accidents. She comes ripping right on out of the archive and sprinting across the palace. She has no idea who the intended victim is, but at this point, even though she herself admits that it's just conjecture, too many things are adding up all at once. Had these things been even more separated, then maybe she would have been like, you know, it's just me being worried. But everything is overlapping. It's coming to a point, it seems as though someone truly is interfering with an imperial, with someone who is noble. And today could be the day. And if it isn't the day, then maybe enough alarm will be raised for someone to check to make sure that the place has not been rigged for an assassination. And you know what, if she's wrong, then only a simple servant girl will be beheaded. Well, Maomao sprints on over to the altar, to the temple, and there is confronted by the guards, like, you are not allowed in, you clearly do not belong. They won't let her through, and so she taunts them, threatens them basically with, if you don't let me get on through, someone is going to die, and that's going to be on your heads, to which she then gets a club to the face. And let me just say this, I don't know if any of you have also received that kind of blunt force trauma to your face, but yeah, that is basically how it's going to go. And no, you're not instantly going to get knocked out, and no, you don't just simply roll that off. You're going to be feeling that for a while. I've had that happen to me a couple of times. Yeesh. But Maomao gets back on up and is able then to finally convince him, now that his anger's on out there, at least to not club her again. She's like, look, either I am wrong and I get executed, or I'm right and we save someone, and really it's no loss to you. But of course she's kind of ticked the guy off in her gamble. It was the wrong gamble to make, which comes back to something we saw again in an earlier episode where Maomao's able to really read most situations well, but when it comes to reading people, she sometimes makes the wrong call. And this is then where Lacan comes in clutch and saves his daughter effectively by using his authority to pull the strings to let her get on through. She gets in at just the right time to grab this guy, push him right off the altar right before the heavy hangings and the pillar come crashing down to smash him flat. Turns out to be Jinshi. The only problem is that, again, you don't just simply shrug off getting smacked in the face with that much force, and she passes out. The episode then ends with Jinshi being an absolute boss and carrying her, though really he should be rushing her to the medical office, to the hospital wing in the barracks, but carrying her off while everyone else is just there bowing, looking very, very awkward. And I'm just going to say right here, I get that this is some very important ceremony, there is decorum to be had, but if a high nobleman was almost assassinated, and there's all kinds of stuff happening within this ritualistic area that doesn't seem kosher, maybe you would want to leave your spot and try to help out. It makes you wonder almost how many people might be in on what just happened, and how many of these people are so yellow-livered that they are completely shocked and refuse to move from their place, or are they just so bound by ceremony that they're not supposed to move? Who knows? It's not a good situation for Jinshi. So really, ultimately, thanks to Maomao and to a certain extent Lacan, he is alive despite the assassination attempt, and a very well done assassination attempt too. And so he walks off like a boss with Maomao. Wait until the next episode. This episode was very different from the majority of the episodes that we've gotten from the Apothecary Diaries, even many of the other very serious and somewhat darker episodes that we've seen throughout the season. And that's because this episode actually has action. For a show that is more slow paced, that's more about the characters, about solving these mysteries and everything, in a story where you don't expect Maomao to come in guns blazing, there's not a whole lot of action to be had in the Apothecary Diaries. As a result, it is very much a character-focused, character-centric story where we rely more on dialogue, character interactions, the humor, the mysteries, the background details, and all of that to help fill things in. This episode sticks out because there is indeed action. We get to see Maomao taking action. We see violence performed right there on the screen, and violence inflicted upon our main characters. But none of it feels out of place. None of it feels like this has been unearned or like this just came out of left field. And why? Well, that's because this has been built up to for episode after episode after episode. All of these different mysteries that seem to be used to just kind of enhance Maomao's standing within the palace were all interconnected. Now, they didn't have to be. The author intended it for it to be that way, but there have been, of course, all these other mysteries that were not connected to this attempted assassination, at least not directly. And so, as a result, we were left wondering, is there really any sort of connection right here, or is this just Maomao helping to clean up house in a very wonky palace that should really get its ducks in a row? And so if we look at it right here, this episode is ultimately the payoff, the culmination of lots of things that have so far happened. For one, Maomao meeting up with Lihaku and developing a somewhat good relationship with him. And through that relationship, then being roped into the whole warehouse business and actually having some sort of stakes and understanding of what is going on there. Then, of course, also the coma inducement through seaweed, the assassination of one of the warehouse guild managers through salt in his liquor, which is still an absolutely incredible one to me. And then also through the three brothers, through their disagreement over the will. What exactly are we supposed to do? What was father intending for us right here? And then, of course, all of the things that we've so far seen with Lacan, that he himself did have an inkling that something was going on here within the palace. He wasn't just simply taking a back seat and just being like, well, all of this will sort itself out. And he wasn't acting as nefarious as I had previously supposed. Instead, he himself, much like the tactician and strategist that he is, was placing all of his pieces where they needed to be in order order to prevent this potential assassination and possibly stylize himself as the hero, or to disavow himself from anything that would go a little bit messy. We still don't yet entirely know, but this very well fits kind of the MO that we've been seeing of him over these past few episodes, but not as, again, just not as sinister as I had thought. And then, of course, all of the episodes that detailed Shuri and what's going on there is so much that is coming together across both halves of the season to lead to this point. None of this feels out of place. All of this feels well built up, well developed, and well earned for this epic moment. And I'm going to say something that might shock some of you novice authors out there. This is actually pretty difficult to set up. It's really, really easy to just throw idea after idea after idea after idea into your story. But keeping the different events, the characters, the ideas, the themes relevant, it gets very difficult because the more you throw in, the more you have to juggle, and the easier it is for something either to become irrelevant or no longer fit in, or to just be overall forgotten, even by the creator themselves. What we see right here in the Apothecary Diaries has been a very good juggling act, in part by relocating some of the really big events and some of the really big clues to ultimately standalone stories that could become relevant later on when their consequences, when the results were needed, and also then complementing that with a very slow burn of an overall mystery and a slow burn of character development and character interactions. That takes skill, that takes patience on the part of the author, and that's something that you only really acquire by constantly working with your characters, working with your stories, edit to get it right. But now, where do we exactly go from here? Well, first off, Maomao really needs some serious treatment. And what we see in the preview for the next episode, the investigation is going to be well underway to find the people responsible for all of this. And some faces, new and old, are instantly coming on over to us. The conspiracy runs deep within the palace. This is going to be very interesting right here, and because this has happened with plenty of episodes still to go before the season concludes, there is a lot of potential for reconciliations to be had, new mysteries to be uncovered, grand answers to be revealed to us, and brilliant character development still to be made. I am really excited for what happens next. This episode right here was just fantastic. This was the drama that we've really needed. This is the culmination of all the hard work leading up to this point. But there is one other thing that I would be absolutely remiss to leave out in my video right here. It's the matter of power, of autonomy, of freedom, of choice for Maomao. I've talked about this a whole lot, about how much of the story for the Apothecary Diaries is about the women of the palace finding themselves and asserting a certain amount of autonomy, of freedom, of power, of identity for themselves. And while Maomao has actually become a power player, and we actually see that here in this episode, she is a power player within the dealings of the palace. Even though she's not been elevated to that status, she absolutely is, thanks in large part to the connections that she's been able to make with other people. Maomao still undervalues herself, and in part because she doesn't want to be a massive power player. What she wants is she just wants the life that she wants. She wants to be an apothecary who can enjoy all of her experiments, doing her fun things, and she will do Jinshi's bidding. She will get involved in certain cases and in certain ordeals in order to entertain that notion, to enjoy living that life, and to build herself up to that. Here in this episode, we see her of her own volition, really grabbing the reins already from Lihaku and thinking, what can I do here with the situation? She is not just simply letting it roll off her shoulders. She now takes an active role in what is happening here, and she challenges authority a lone servant girl going up against the soldiers in the heart of the ceremonial area and challenging said authority, getting up after being smashed in the face with a club. That right there is showing her own determination, her freedom of choice. She is more also than just an apothecary. She is a good woman, a good girl who is going out of her way to help other people. And that's because that's the person that she wants to be. And though she might not have the insignia and the robes and the title to allow her to push other people around, she has a force of will that bends others to help her on out. This is no mere Mary Sue right here. She has built herself up over plenty of episodes to show that she's not a Mary Sue, and this episode also helps to cement that with the challenges that she faces and with the weaknesses that she still has yet to overcome. But yet we see her asserting herself, her power and her freedom in order to save someone who she didn't even know, who ends up being Jinshi. And that's actually pretty remarkable right there, because she's not doing this just to save him. This could have been anyone, but she was doing this because it was the right thing. This episode right here shows us who Maomao is. This is the culmination of her journey thus far. And granted, there's still a whole lot more for her to do. There's a lot more growing to be had. She's not there yet. But this episode firmly solidifies Maomao as the true woman that she is. Not just as an apothecary, not just as a servant, but as a very strong young woman who does what is right and is a force to be reckoned with. And that is what makes this episode so great. And it's going to be interesting to see how Jinshi reciprocates all of that, because we know that going into this second half of the season, that this is also going to be a little bit more about him and his character development. And while he's done a lot of goofy things and some things that we're definitely not proud of when we see him do it, there is a better man somewhere within there, and he's beginning to show that. And this could be his opportunity, and that'll be very interesting to see play out. So, let's wait until the next video. But in the meantime, as we're waiting for the next episode of the Apothecary Diaries to drop, if you'd like to support the work that we do here, if you'd like more analyses and the likes, please check out our other videos and check out the books that we've published as well. Links for them are in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming here to my, not TED Talk, but to my Apothecary Diaries diatribe. And until the next video, y'all, choose.
なんでこんな状況になっている。
紳士様ご応募いただけますか。
それどころじゃないだろう。